The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Friday. We were doing the little Friday dance around here just a few minutes ago. I know that for all of you watching, sometimes Friday is not really your Friday. It is one of those weird anomalies in the autism community that sometimes the weekend means you've got less support, which means that it's a harder time and that Monday can be an actual relief. And I want you to know that for a lot of years that was my circumstance, and I get that. Right now, I will share with you that my life is so good, my child has progressed so far, that having a weekend with him to get to go and do fun things is a joy and a treat. And we all look forward to it in our family. So if don't feel resentful when I mention that it's Friday and that we're excited about it, but realize that someday, feel resentful if you want to. I don't want to tell you how to feel, of course. But know that it may be that if you're doing all the right things, that someday soon, that having less support in a moment won't be a hardship, but a thrill. I can remember when they said to us, okay, your therapy is coming to a close, and I went, really? I don't know, what do we do? And we've been, a year and a half now without ABA in our home from other therapists. Certainly my husband and I try to uphold ABA in our household, but we don't have therapy appointments anymore. We don't go to OT, and we don't go to speech, and it's been a really interesting thing. What do we do when we don't do that? Very, very interesting, and I wish that for you in the near future. In any case, we are going to talk for the next 2 hours with you about autism and how we can all be more efficient, more effective in our lives, and in dealing with some of the more disabling aspects of this disorder when it's with our children, with our teens, or if you're a teenager or young adult yourself who is wanting to overcome some of your challenges. We're going to give you strategies to help you to get through all the different things that come up on this journey, whether it's emotional, financial, behavioral, medical, what have you. We want to talk about the full gamut of it here on the show. We encourage you to interact with us. This entire show is meant to be an interaction. We give you an opportunity to ask experts questions, and even when an expert isn't here with us in the studio, because normally on Fridays we have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. He's not here with us today. He was with us on Monday because he's away at a conference today. But our experts are ongoing, and we encourage you to write in and give us your questions at whatever time is convenient for you. And Emily's going to cycle through some of the different ways that you can watch the show, some of the different ways that you can interact with us, because there are many different ways to catch us. There are many different ways to talk to us. And while she's showing you that, I want to remind you there's only one place to watch the show live, and that's on www.autism-live.com. On our channel, a couple of things go on there. There's some information there, and there's a growing amount of information there. When we're live, you see a box there that says questions that we're answering right now. That's a free feature. All you have to do is stick your cursor there, type away whatever you want to type, hit enter. You don't have to log in. We're not taking your personal information, but you hit enter and it shows up magically here on my screen, and we can have a conversation. Or if it's something that's more appropriate for an expert that's coming in, I'll say, hey, we're going to talk about this on Tuesday with BCBA Evelyn Gould, or we're going to save this question for Ask Dr. Doreen. So feel free at whatever point to write in whatever you want. Also want to point out that on that www.autism-live.com, the show plays endlessly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And there is no schedule except for the fact that we are live 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And depending on what time zone you're in, if you're in the Eastern time zone of the United States, that's from 1 to 3 p.m. If you're on the Pacific Coast, for example, that's from 10 a.m. until noon. But we do replay shows, and of course, as Emily just showed you, we're on Blip, we're on YouTube, we're on iTunes, all of those places for free. And there's a new place where you can catch us, the Autism Speaks Network. It is an app that you can get in the Google Play Store, or you can get it on iTunes. It's free. And it will allow you to watch recent episodes of our show and clips from our show on your mobile devices. And while you're there, we have 6 sister programs that are also on the Autism Speaks Network that you can check out as well. And lots of great information. And I think that's key for all of us that are in some way on this journey. I am not an autism expert. I always like to remind you guys that I'm an autism parent. My son was diagnosed at the age of 2.5. He's now 9.5. And as I mentioned, we don't have therapy anymore. I know that when we started on the journey and we started on ABA, that people said that that would happen. It's just about a year in, I let go of that idea. I don't know what life became, what life was, but it's pretty sweet right now. And I know I have a lot to pay forward. So that's job number 1 for me, to sit here and be a conduit to you, to pay forward what was given to me, the information and the access that I had. And I continue to learn every day with your help and the help of the experts that we have on the show. It's an amazing, amazing thing. And I really encourage you to participate in whatever way is appropriate and comfortable for you. If you prefer to keep it more quiet and email us separately, we're happy to get back to you in email. Or if you want to share your question with everybody, you can join us on Facebook or right on the live feature. Okay. We have so much to cover today, so I want to get started. We like to start every morning with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. That's right, the jargon du jour. And this is when we take one word, one phrase, one acronym and try to demystify it. And we'll give you an actual definition to start. And sometimes I like to make fun of the actual definitions because, I don't know about you, the jargon really frustrated me when I started on this journey. Like, it wasn't enough that I had to find a whole new way to communicate with my child, but I had to find a whole new way to communicate with the experts. Oh, it was a little overwhelming. But I admit it, I have made friends with the jargon. I love the jargon a little bit now because I see why they use it. It's so specific. When we have the opportunity to slowly learn what these terms mean and to learn how they relate to our individual children, I think they're pretty powerful. So we give you the actual definition, then we give you a working definition so that you can begin to apply it to your individual self or your individual child. Okay, we've had new jargon all this week, which I've been very excited about. And the first time we've ever defined it here on the show, we certainly talk about it, but the first time we've ever defined it here on the show, it is gluten. Ah, yes, gluten. Let's see what our actual definition is. It's gluten, the mixture of proteins, including gliadins and glutlins, I'm probably saying those wrong, found in wheat grains, which are not soluble in water and which give wheat dough its elastic texture. So that's what gluten is, but let's look at what our working definition is: a protein composite found in foods processed from wheat and related grain species, including barley and rye. And I specifically wanted to include that because I am somebody who is allergic to wheat. And I've known that I'm allergic to wheat for a very long time, a very, very long time, and eliminated that from my diet. But I was still having rye, for instance, and barley, to be quite honest with you. And so when my son was diagnosed with autism, and it was a little while after that I was asking somebody while we were waiting to get all of our intervention and our services, excuse me, I said to someone, okay, what can I do? In the meantime, I feel like I'm sitting on my hands. You know, everybody says it's so important, excuse me, to start early, to be doing stuff. And now I have to sit on my hands and do nothing. What do you do? And this person just offhand said, oh, well, you know, there's that diet that some of the parents do. I don't think it really works. And of course, my ears popped up because I've been allergic to so many things in my life. I said, what do you mean? What diet? And she goes, oh, it's that gluten diet. And that's literally what she said. She didn't say the gluten casein-free diet. And remember that this was 7 years ago. So at that time, nobody was talking about a paleo diet or a low oxalate diet. Some people were talking about Feingold, but in any case, she said that gluten diet thing. And I said, gluten? What's gluten? She goes, oh, it's wheat. And I went, oh, well, I'm allergic to wheat, and I know how I feel on wheat. Oh my gosh, and sometimes I'll break out into hives, but not always with the wheat. I get very uncomfortable and hot and inconsolable, and maybe later the hives come, but I can't concentrate, and I'm a mess, and I'm in pain when I have wheat. And I thought, wow, is that possibly what's going on with my child? And she said, oh, I don't know, you could try it. So we did. We eliminated gluten from his diet, and my child was a different child within 3 days. Now, big asterisk there. That is not every child on the autism spectrum. But for kids that gluten is an issue, it can make a tremendous difference. And it has the potential to be a very quick thing. I've heard lots of parents say, boy, we didn't see a difference until 3 months down the road or 6 months down the road. And generally they tell people if you're going to try to remove things, you should give it a 6-month shot, whatever it is. But the reason why I included the barley and the rye was because she said it was wheat. And that's what I did. I eliminated the wheat. And eventually, as we learned, oh, it's ever so much more than that. And that gluten can be in cosmetics, it can be in lots of things that you put on your skin, which may or may not be a problem for a child who's having a problem ingesting it. It's a very interesting how it affects each one of us in a different way. Eventually, by the way, we did eliminate casein too, which was our jargon yesterday. And my son remains gluten and casein free. I know lots of families that have been able to successfully transition their child off of the diet. It isn't something that we've even looked at because he does so well. I have not been convinced that I'm ready to try taking him experimenting. We'll see. And as I said, not for everyone, but it is something to consider and look at if your child is having certain issues. And I think that it's worth the try, because if it is something that has a tremendous effect on your child, then you will be thrilled that you tried it. If it doesn't, then you can say, well, we definitely tried that. You know what I mean? So in any case, here is what gluten means. And I mentioned yesterday when we were talking about casein that there are a lot of great resources out there for what gluten can be masked as, what it might be in. I mentioned Taka Now, that you can go to takanow.org. I mentioned several other places, but I specifically want to mention today because on Monday we're going to have Julie Matthews from Nourishing Hope, and they've got an amazing array of services and things that pamphlets and information, content is the word that I'm looking for on Nourishing Hope. So I would encourage you to check that out. And by the way, Julie Matthews will be with us on Monday in the first hour of the show on Monday. So if you have questions about diet and food and what you're feeding your child and how to help you to do this in a way that is not going to break your bank and not going to make you feel as though you're in prison, Julie Matthews is the authority on that. So you'll definitely want to tune in on Monday for that if you're interested in hearing more about diet. I mentioned the low oxalate and the paleo, and if you want to know more about all that, make sure you're here on Monday. Okay, so there's gluten, and I encourage you to investigate for yourself. All of our kids are different, but investigate, see if it's something that you want to try. All right, we always have a question of the day for you. Question of the day meant to get you thinking, participating. Boy, you guys participated yesterday, and I loved it. We frequently will ask, we try to vary it, and ask you guys something that's on the happy end of things. What's working well? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? But then we try to give you a session every once in a while when you can offload. We all need to offload. And yesterday the question was, what really makes you angry about Autism Research? And I said, it's gloves off, go for it, and say what you got to say. And so many of you did. And I do think it's a release for all of us to be able to every once in a while just have a safe place in which you can say, this really tears my ticket. And you guys showed up. I loved that. Now, today, different we're getting ready for a weekend of sorts. So I want you to dream a little bit. What do you think the biggest breakthrough in autism research will be? What are you hoping for? I said yesterday that the thing that I am really looking forward to is the day when we have phenotyped autism. Because, you know, one of the things, quite frankly, let's be honest here, if I'm to say what tears my ticket in terms of autism research, is that isn't always taken into consideration. That when families are talked to about, say, a dietary intervention, a lot of doctors will say, oh, well, it hasn't been shown scientifically to show any improvement. And then there are families who sit there, myself included, who say, my child started speaking after we took gluten out of his diet. And you can tell me that your little science experiment didn't show it, and I believe you. But what I know is that some of the kids have a difference and some don't. So who did you put in your study? And once we phenotype autism and know, well, there's this type of autism and there's this type of autism, then I want them to do a study on diet. And then I think it will clearly show, it's my expectation, because I view it in vivo, in real life, that what we're going to see is that with this type of autism, absolutely diet makes a huge change. And with this type of autism, it doesn't. And once we can phenotype it and know what kind of autism, then we're going to be that much quicker at being able to help our kids. And people will stop doing this blanket research that really doesn't get to the core of the matter. I always use the example, if we were going to take one specific cancer treatment that's been shown to be effective with one specific type of cancer and just had a bunch of random cancer patients come in and gave it all to them and averaged it all out, we would probably come back and see that the result was, well, this thing doesn't work. And yet it worked with this one very specific case. We need to get that specific about autism. That's what I'm hoping and dreaming and pulling for and visualizing and hoping. I know that there are great minds working on it, and I believe that in the next 5 years we will get there. And I mentioned yesterday, I'm going to party in the street. I'll find a sailor to kiss. That will be an amazing day. I will be so thrilled. It won't be the end, but I think it will make it so that the research is very targeted and has a different effect. Very excited about that. But I'd love to hear from you. We're going to check in a little bit later on Facebook. I want to hear what you think the big breakthrough is going to be. So excited to see, because you guys are on the front lines. And I know that this is something that you will all be passionate about. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. Now, we always have a topic of the week, and our topic this entire week has been autism research. And we talk about this endlessly, and we take at least an hour or 2 hours every week where we talk about autism research, and we have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox with us, and Angela Persicki, who is also someone from the Autism Research Group, is with us on a regular basis, and Dr. Dorian Grampiche talks about research here, and we have experts who will come on and talk about research. And it's very exciting. I do like to mix it with, we need to have research and we need to talk about what's going to help us right now. You know, I do think that that's important. But we've been able to talk about a lot of research today. Certainly have only scratched the surface. We will continue to talk about that today, and really will continue to talk about it forever. So, and on the list of things to talk about today, but of course your questions come first, some of the different things we're going to talk about today, we've got a little funding tip for you. And we have more funding tips coming for you on Monday, by the way, in particular about technology and getting help and support. That's actually on Tuesday, Tuesday of this week. We're going to talk a little bit about compliance today, because you know I love to talk about compliance, because compliance makes the difference of whether your life is moving smoothly and your child is making great progress and is happy and you are a happy camper. So compliance, I love to talk about compliance. And then in just a minute, we're going to be talking about an ASD-friendly Spider-Man. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to let you know how, if you are at all in the New York area, how you might catch a performance of Spider-Man on Broadway, but a sensory-friendly version. Stick with us. Currently in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism, my beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're going to take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Grandpichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Did you have some guesses?
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christina Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana.
We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable, and recovery from autism is possible. Welcome back to Autism Live. We mentioned that you have an opportunity coming up, April 27th to be exact, if you're in the New York area or can be in the New York area, to see an autism-friendly, sensory-friendly version of Spider-Man. This is on Broadway. Of course, we're talking about Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. And I want to be specific about this, the Theater Development Fund, TDF, has been for a couple of years now, every once in a while, providing an experience on Broadway, taking a specific musical, working with them to take the things that happen that are sensory and alter them ever so slightly so that you're still seeing the show, but that it's friendly enough for children who are on the spectrum to be able to attend and enjoy with their families. I think it's a really wonderful idea. It started with The Lion King, then they did Mary Poppins and Elf, and they've done a couple of different times of doing The Lion King, and now for the first time they're going to do it with Spider-Man, which is a very special effects intensive show from my understanding of it. With a lot of loud, jarring noises and some pretty incredible things. They are going to tone it down for this one specific performance, which again is on April 27th. You can get tickets that are available at a reduced rate by contacting the TDF, and Emily's going to put the address up there for you. I want to mention that the tickets range from $35 to $80. And I know that even on their site, there are a lot of autism parents who are a little outraged that that's what's affordable. I do think it's a perspective thing because that may not be in your price range right now. It is a reduced rate for Broadway, though. As shocking as that may seem, that is a reduced rate. So if it's something that isn't within your budget right now, that's completely understandable, but there will be more performances of other musicals, and maybe you catch it another time. If it is something that you can save for to be in your budget, or have somebody who wants to gift something for your child, I will say that taking your child to a wonderful Broadway performance is something that's of benefit to all children. And I think all too often our kids on the spectrum are discounted as being able to enjoy that kind of thing. And I will be very honest with you that we took last year our son to see Peter Pan, which has just been on tour throughout the United States. And it was a game changer, folks. Our child, who had been singing before he descended into autism and hadn't been afterwards, began singing on a daily basis again after seeing Peter Pan. So worthwhile. I tell you, the joy that lights up their little faces. I'm going to get emotional about it, but if you're in the New York area, and I can think of so many little boys on the autism spectrum and little girls as well who would find it very reinforcing to be able to go see Spider-Man. So we thank the Theater Development Fund for making these kinds of performances possible for our kids. And if you want more information about that, again, visit their website. Okay, Spider-Man. Turn off the dark, but not too dark, right? Not too bright either. All right, we're going to take a break, and we will be back with a really great tip for the flu. Stick with us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back. You're live on Autism Live, and I've got my friend Jennifer here. I'm so excited she's here to help me. She's got a son named Dylan. I got a son named Jeff. We got all sorts of allergy issues. And a lot of you say, what the heck can we do to eat breakfast that's not full of carbs?
And getting my son to eat vegetables.
Oh, yeah. This is a vegetable. So we're going to eat vegetables today. And so what we're making is a zucchini muffin. So let's go ahead and get started. So we just dumped in our zucchinis. You can start with less if you want to graduate your kid to actually eating healthy. We're going to do some eggs. And again, I use the organic cage-free eggs. So there's our eggs. I'm going to add in our oil. Again, I use a high heat oil. And the reason why I use a high heat oil, because when you bake, you want to make sure you're using an oil that doesn't disintegrate, because when oil gets too hot and it's not meant to get hot, it becomes toxic. So you got to be careful with your oils. So there goes our maple syrup, and again, organic maple syrup. What we're going to add next is cinnamon and our baking soda, baking powder to our mix. There's a lot of variations on flours. A lot of our kids are allergic to wheat, so there's a lot of things we can do to make this SCD, specific carbohydrate compliant, or just gluten-free, casein-free, soy-free. And flaxseed meal. Flaxseed meal is a great resource for extra fiber within the kids' diets. We're just going to turn on this fabulous, wonderful KitchenAid, and we're good. It's a great, great looking batter. And what we're going to do is talk a little bit about baking, where almost everything is aluminum, and aluminum can be a problem for some kids, especially kids that can't methylate and take the toxins out with their body. But if you've got, like me, I've got muffin tins, so I have the ability to just simply put in some cupcake holders, and that actually holds that together if I want to freeze it. Hey, nice work. Those look good, but wait till you see them when they're done.
All right.
So go ahead and pull them out. Here are the fabulous muffins. Now, if you've got a sensory kid that doesn't like vegetables, I can already ice by the zucchini. Remember what I told you earlier. Dissolve that simply by peeling off the green layer, and then it will cook literally translucent. Such a nice golden brown. I love how the texture is. We know that the breakfast can be a challenge. This makes that process a whole lot easier for you and your family. I really appreciate all the feedback. We definitely want to hear from you for our next segment. If you'd like us to cook something or maybe make an old favorite and that's allergy-free, we can do that here on Autism Live. So give us your feedback. You can email us at autismlive@gmail.com. We also have a Facebook page like everybody, facebook.com/autismlive. And also you can reach Taka on the Taka website at Taka Now. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for joining us on Autism Live.
Say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back. It's flu season, and a lot of you have been writing in and talking about symptoms that your children are having, and it's a really bad flu season, and there's a pretty messy flu that's going around. And I want to say, disclaimer, it's bad for everyone, but there is something about having children on the autism spectrum that sometimes you have to be a little bit more careful what you give them, and sometimes it's a little bit harder because they can't always communicate to you what they're feeling and when they're feeling it, right? Well, I wanted to, from time to time, I like to talk to you guys about a specific product or thing that I found that just bells, whistles go off because it's so exciting to me. And so parents have been asking, and I wanted to bring this in and show this because I mentioned it to somebody the other day. Recently, we were getting on a plane to come back from being after my mom had died, and we went to get on the plane, and my son, as we got on the plane, that's when the flu hit. Oh my goodness, what a bad time for the flu to hit, right? But we managed to get home. So unfortunate. Managed to get home, went to the doctor, and there was a new pediatrician in our practice who didn't know me. and she wrote me a prescription for something and tested him, said influenza type A, to give him this prescription. And I looked at the prescription and I started asking questions. Well, what does this do? What are the side effects? She said, well, here's the insert to a box. You can take a look. And there were some cautionary things. I went back to some of the people in my community who know about autism, and I said, I'm concerned about this medication. I don't know that it's the best thing for my individual child, and isn't there something else that I can do, because I don't like the side effects attached to this. It literally had the possibility of making my child hallucinate, and I was not comfortable with that as an autism parent. I don't know how I would language that for him in a way that he would understand, and I thought that might even be worse than the symptoms he's having. This is what was recommended to me by an autism parent. And I will say the name, and I'm sure that I'm going to slaughter it for you. They've spelled it out. Say oscillococcinum. We make fun of me in the house because I have lots of different ways that I say it. Oxycocillosum. The good stuff is what I've started referring to it as, because we went and we got, this is over the counter, and it is considered a homeopathic medicine. It's for flu symptoms. And you'll notice that this is the children's version. There is also an adult version. And what is interesting to me about this is that I got this, and somebody in my family mentioned to me that this is the stuff I had forgotten. My father swore by this. I can remember him taking this more than 20 years ago. So that's how long this medicine has been around. And we actually had this in our household, the adult version that somebody had told us to have on hand during the H1N1 season. But it does, like all medicines, it will expire. And so you need to check expiration dates if you already have it hanging around your house. But we went and got a whole new batch of it to keep in the house during this flu season, because I got it. I gave it to my son. It comes in these cute little vials. This little box here, and again, it's the children's version. This is for children 2 and up, and you will need to follow the instructions. There is one little dose of this that's left. It comes in a little vial, and you open up the vial and you let the child, you pour it into their mouth, and you just let it dissolve. And we saw such a turnaround in our child's symptoms. He, by the way, when we took him to the doctor, he had been throwing up. He was starting to be severely dehydrated, not to the point where he yet needed IV fluids, but we were getting there. And his temperature was 103.6. you know, that's when the warning bells go off as a parent. And he had body aches and he was a miserable little boy. And I gave this to him and he was eating within a few hours. It was really quite miraculous. It is over the counter and you can get it at most drugstores, carry it. You just have to look for it. Again, I call it oscillococcinum or something, but the correct pronunciation is oscillococcinum. Okay, I believe. But it's the good stuff. That's what you want to call it. Make sure you follow the directions. And of course, a lawyer somewhere will want me to say, before giving any medication to your child, make sure you check with your physician. We like to make the lawyers happy. But truly, something to look into and to keep on hand. There is an adult version for it too, but this particular brand is specified for children 2 and up. Follow the directions. Really fabulous. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back with our question of the day and your answers. Stick with us.
Hi everyone, welcome back. For the month of February, I thought it'd be a great idea to work on an activity that would help your kiddos identify and label emotions. And to help me out today is my good friend, Jamie.
Hey, Suzanne.
Hey there, Jamie.
Hey, how can I help?
Well, the way you can help me out is that because you're a sock puppet, you can do things with your face that I cannot do.
No way!
Totally. The way you can do it is that, you know, you have interchangeable features, which means you can make super exaggerated faces, which makes it easier for kiddos to identify them and to label them.
Uh-huh.
Hey, I have a favor to ask you.
Yeah?
Can you help us out and show us some of your faces you can make?
Of course! Here we go!
Ooh, you look super mad.
I was super mad.
Can you show us another one?
Sure.
Ooh, you look super sad.
I was super sad.
All right, can you show us one more?
One more.
All right. You look super excited.
I was super excited.
I am too. You know why? Because I really want to show everyone how to make a little buddy like you. So let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are googly eyes, felt, a hot glue gun, imagination, scissors, Velcro, some heavy cardstock, and a clean sock. All right, let's get to it. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to grab your sock. Hopefully it's not dirty and used. It's a clean one. And what you're going to do is that you're going to take your sock, fold it in half like so, and then you're going to take your scissors and cut down. The reason we're doing this is that we're going to make an area for the mouth. The next thing you want to do is you want to trim the inside a little bit, because if you don't, it's going to have an overbite. So I'm just going to take my scissors and just trim a little bit off, not much. Now that this guy is ready, I'm going to take a hard cardstock or note card or whatever you have that's a piece of paper. I'm going to fold it in half, and what I'm going to do with this is going to be the inside of its mouth, the kind of reinforcement so you're able to move its mouth around. So I'm going to just cut it into an oval. And don't worry, if it's a little too big, you can always trim it. With this sock puppet project, the materials we'll be using, like the hot glue, is not something for children. So this is something you're going to be doing by yourself and then asking your child to join in once the puppet is ready to go. All right, now that I got that out of the way, let's start gluing. I'm going to take my hot glue gun and I'm going to glue it on the paper. Okay, once I have that, I'm going to put that in the inside of its mouth, and then I'm going to take the sock and then pull it over the edge and cover it with the glue. All right, so now that I have the bottom part done, I'm going to do the same thing to the top. So now that we have this part assembled, what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of felt and we're going to cover this area so you don't see all the scraggly stuff. So I have my piece of felt right here. I'm going to fold it in half and I'm just going to cut out a similar oval shape. And again, don't worry if it's too big. You can always trim it after we glue it on. I'm going to glue it inside. All right, now we got pretty much the base of the sock puppet. He's got a moving mouth, but wait, he's got no features. We gotta help him out with that. So what I'm gonna do is I have these pieces of Velcro that I bought that are already sticky on the back, which makes my life a lot easier. And I'm gonna peel this off and place it where I want his eyes. So one there and one there. And then I'm also gonna put them also along his mouth And then if you want to get fancy, you can put some for his eyebrows as well. So now that I have this, we should be making some features for him.
I'm alive! Alive!
I had a great time with my buddy Jamie, and I hope you did too. Until next time, bye.
Bye. And don't forget to send us your photos at facebook.com/autismlive.
Can you see me? Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back. That's our Smartie for the month of February. It's very cute. It cracks me up every time I see it. Very cute. But right now we're looking at your answers to the question of the day. And our question today was, what do you think the biggest breakthrough in autism research will be? So we're talking about something in the future down the road. So many people wrote in and said finding what the main cause is. And I think we can all agree that that will be an amazing day. And I have all the faith in the world that that will happen someday. I hope it's in my lifetime. Somebody else who says researching those that have been affected by vaccines and finding out the common trait that they all share. I think that's a really important thing. Stem cells. And once somebody said that, a lot of you jumped on the bandwagon and said stem cells is a very interesting thing. We know that great headway has been made in other areas with stem cells. And right now there is a research project going on in the state of Arizona that's been approved by the government. We're waiting to hear what those studies are, but it's a very interesting thing. Somebody else saying to find the cause, and someone else says to help symptoms to make life better for those affected. We always hope, but we have seen some progress in terms of that. And I want to go to one of our other sites here where you guys answer the question of the day. Again, the question was, what do you think and hope that the big breakthrough will be? We're always looking for what's the thing that changes the whole playing field. And so somebody wrote genetics, that genetics is going to be the thing that, and it may be. I think a lot of people are moving more towards, of course we need to look at, we know for sure now, what research has shown us is that there is a genetic component, absolutely undeniable that in some cases there is a genetic component, but it's absolutely undeniable now that there is an environmental component to autism as well. And, you know, I will be honest with you that this was news to me that we had answered this question, that's been answered, it's been shown. This was absolute news to me, but we went to an ARI conference last fall, and while we were there, Dr. Clara Lajonche, who is in the clinical department for Autism Speaks, was sharing about a study that she was involved with about twins. And of course, I'm not the person to talk about specific research, but it was absolutely fascinating because she had the graphics to go with it, and she said, look, if it were genetics, then, and we were looking at twins, and she looked at she had the largest study of twins, and both identical and not identical. And she said, if it were genetic, we would for sure, this is what the chart would look like, but this is what the chart actually looks like. So we can't look at this anymore and say that it's purely genetic. Otherwise, this would not exist in the amount that it does. And then she said if it was purely environmental, this is what the chart should look like. But here is what it does look like. So we cannot. And it was just a lovely representation that I went, oh, okay. It's crystal clear because this huge study done with twins. And I don't know how anybody could argue that it's specifically one or the other anymore after having a look at this. And it all makes complete and total sense. And I encourage you to, we did an interview with Dr. Lajonche, but also she is a very prolific speaker, and you can look up the things that she's done and potentially hear her speak sometime. It's very, very inspirational. But you know, more research needs to be done in both arenas. I think that's fair to say. Somebody else says, well, of course, a cure, that's a given, but it would be great to know what causes it, okay, so that we can help prevent it, though I love my son like crazy, and he's taught me much that I wouldn't have learned had I not adopted him. Wonderful. And somebody said, I'd rather know why than have a cure. And of course, there are a great many people, maybe some of you that are watching, that the whole word cure holds an emotional impact that we had somebody write in yesterday and say that it really bothers them when people talk about a cure because they identify themselves as being autistic and they feel that that's a difference, not something that should be looked at as having to overcome. I always like to put out there to everyone watching that, again, there are different kinds of autism, and there are some people on the autism spectrum that have very disabling aspects to the autism. And I do think that when we talk about a cure, that people are talking about overcoming the disabling aspects. And if you have the wherewithal to be on Facebook and to be writing and saying, I become angry and feel insulted when people say that how I am needs to be cured, you don't have the kind of autism that we're talking about. Do you know what I mean? Because you are what we hope our children will be someday. That's the truth. We're hoping to get them to the point where you are. So I think that just to delineate what we're talking about. But clearly there are a great many individuals on the autism spectrum that couldn't be on Facebook, that can't communicate their needs vocally or writing, and those are the individuals that I think we're all trying to help, and I think we can all unite on that front. In any case, I hope that you guys will continue to write in and let us know what you hope is going to be the big breakthrough. And we've had lots of little breakthroughs, and from time to time we've had big breakthroughs. I mean, certainly discovering the power of ABA in a child's life when it's done in the right amount by a really good practitioner at the right time can have a tremendous effect upon a child. So we'll look forward to more breakthroughs like that. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about funding. We've got a new funding tip that we want to talk with you about. It kind of goes hand in hand with some of the things we've been talking about all week long. Stick with us.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The Skills Assessment and Curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes Skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The Skills Assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the Skills Assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tacks, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back. We like to give you on Friday, just like on Monday we talk about stress, on Friday we always talk a little bit about funding, because I like to give you something to chew on, something to think about. It's not one size fits all, right? And we've talked before about grants that you can get from Autism Care and Treatment Today, and we've talked about the United Care Children's Fund. We've talked about getting loans from the Jewish Free Loan Association. We've talked about Lend for Health. And we've been talking more and more about biomedical intervention, and a lot of you have been writing in and expressing interest in pursuing that, but it's expensive, and sometimes it's cost prohibitive. So I wanted to bring to your attention that there is an organization that does grants in some circumstances, very specific grants for biomedical intervention. So I'm talking about an organization called Generation Rescue. You can find their website at generationrescue.org, and they have a tab where you can look at grants, or you can Google their grant program. And you can apply now. It used to be that you can only apply at certain times. I believe now you can apply all the time. There are very specific guidelines. Let's talk first about the things that come with the grant. With the grant, you get 2 doctor visits with a medical physician specially trained in treating autism, a 90-day supply of vitamins, minerals, and supplements, a comprehensive stool analysis lab test, and that's something that most parents want to do, is analyze the poop. You need to look at the poop, right, and see what's going on, especially if you think your child might have gut issues. There is a urine porphyrin lab test, which can sometimes help to identify some of the other things that are going on. There is a Generation Rescue parent mentor that comes with it, a dietary intervention training that they will give you, a listening program for you to be able to listen to, ongoing discounts on supplements and programs provided by our partners after completion of the grant program, and they really do consider it a program. Okay, so this may sound interesting and exciting to you, and how do you go about applying? First of all, you have to determine whether you are eligible, and they're very specific guidelines. They're available to families that have not yet treated the underlying symptom of autism. So I don't think it's a thing where they're trying to penalize you if you have already started, but they're really looking to get to that population that has not been able to do anything biomedical. So before applying, they ask you to please review the following. Has the applicant ever seen a physician trained by a Defeat Autism Now, Dan, or a Medical Academy of Pediatrics, MAPS, doctor? If you have been seen by them, then you do not qualify because you've already started and started into this field, and then there were other grants that you can apply to at other organizations, but not at this particular one. Has the applicant received lab testing from Great Plains, Doctors Data, or Metametrics? If you have, you won't be eligible. Has the applicant been on antifungal or antiviral therapy? If you have, then you're not eligible. Does the applicant currently take any supplements other than fish oil? If you do, you're not eligible. They really want to get on the ground floor with somebody who hasn't tried anything. And does the household income exceed the median income for your state, which is obviously going to be different in each state? So if it's right at the median or a little bit below, you're perfectly fine. If you have said yes to any of those questions, you can't apply. But if you've said no to all of them, you absolutely can apply on their website. And there's more to know about the grant, but I would encourage you to check it out. Again, it's generationrescue.org. They do give grants for families. They're quoting that as of October 2002, that grant recipients have seen an average of 30.3% improvement in communication and 52.7% overall improvement on all ATEC categories. So, and that number for them would seem to be, well, I haven't looked into all the research methods, would seem to be kind of pure because there wasn't an intervention before. So we were able to look and go, this is what's changed. So very interesting thing. If you're interested in biomedical and you have not pursued those things and you are below the median income in your state, you can absolutely check that out. GenerationRescue.org, another source of funding. And I want to also throw out to you that if you are aware, on Tuesday, we are going to have somebody in here with a new source of information about funding specifically for tech devices. And we're really excited about that. And if you have information about more grant programs or more funding for autism, please share those with us, because then we will in turn share it with the other viewers. We all know nobody can afford autism, right? And these kinds of things can make a great, great difference. So you'll definitely want to check that out. Let's take a break and we'll be back with more after these messages.
Every child with autism deserves a bright future.
Without further clarification, the Affordable Care Act could actually result in less benefits for individuals with autism spectrum disorders.
We urge Catherine Sebelius to clarify the Affordable Health Care Act.
She can make one change, one little minor change, to make applied behavioral analysis be part of the health care plan.
By signing this petition, you are protecting the healthcare benefits of individuals with autism spectrum disorders.
We need to make sure
that we are heard
and seen.
Sign the petition at autism-live.com.
Here's how you can show your infinite support. Create your own infinity ribbon.
What you're gonna do is take a ribbon that's been cut about 8 inches long, and you're gonna grab one end and then twist it, and then take the two ends and join them together, and then tape it together. And then I'm gonna flip it around and take another piece of tape. And what I have is double-sided sticky tape. Squeeze down. You have your very own infinity ribbon.
With ABA,
the possibilities are infinite.
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 With ABA,
the possibilities are infinite. Welcome back. We talk about a great many things on this show, but one of the things that we talk about is ABA. And when we say ABA, I'm referring to applied behavior analysis, and this is an age-old science that when we were talking about autism research, and I was saying it was a big moment in time when we began to see what a difference ABA can make to young children, given at the right time for the right amount of time. And of course, the first study that really showed the efficacy of ABA was way back in 1987 when Dr. Lovas published an experiment, the Young Autism Project, and was it 49%, almost, but not quite 50% of the children in his study got to the point where we use the word recovered because they no longer qualified for their autism diagnosis and they were virtually indistinguishable from their peers. Now, we talk about that from time to time on the show, and I just want to bring home to you watching that I had heard about that as a parent, and it was one of the reasons why I wanted to do ABA. I knew quite well that all of the children who do ABA do not, quote unquote, recover. But I also knew that all of them made progress, and that was a very exciting thing to me, and I wanted to give my child the best possible shot. So we started ABA. And then I saw them, I refer to it as the autism miracle in my living room. That's what I call ABA. And years later, after my child had had so much ABA and had made so much improvement, I got to watch a video that is not widely available. And it showed it depicted how Lovaas got to the point where he did the Young Autism Project, and I was unaware of the fact that there was a study that came before that when he worked with 2 individuals who were a little bit older, and it was on a couple of different occasions because they kept losing their funding. So they worked with the kids for a little while and they saw a tremendous improvement, and then they had to stop working with them. This is the heartbreak about research and why I could never go into the field of research. So they did ABA, huge progress, a girl and a boy, and they were a little bit older. I want to say like 8, 9, and tremendous progress. Great. Then their funding got pulled and they had to leave them for a period of time. I believe it was a year and a half. And after a year and a half, they got the funding back again. And they were so excited, and they came back to work with the kids and saw that a great deal of what they had taught them, because it had not been upheld, was lost. And they actually have videotape of these 2 young people. And so you saw them trying to work with, and it was so much harder to work with them that much older. And then again, they lost the funding and had to go away. And they go back and visit them when they are young adults. And it is so heart-wrenching that I sat there and just cried and cried and cried, because you saw so much potential in those 9 and 11, I think is what they were. You saw so much potential, and because they lost their funding, it was lost to them, and it was lost forever. Just devastating. Well, after that experiment and all of the trials and tribulations with that experiment, Dr. Lovaas said, I really want to go and try with younger kids, because I want to see if we can get this to stick. Could we get to the point where we've caught them early enough where it would stick, and we wouldn't, if we stopped doing therapy with them, that they can progress through the rest of their lives? What would that look like? Could we try that? And he got funding for the study, and they, of course, were later, it was pivotal. They published the research, the Young Autism Project, and saw that, in fact, 2 years after the fact, after intensive behavioral intervention, that almost 50% of the kids had reached the point where they no longer qualified for the diagnosis. Okay, then there was another group of kids who'd made tremendous progress, but they hadn't lost their diagnosis. And then there was a group of kids who made progress, but they had a dual diagnosis, and you wouldn't have called it wildly successful, but tremendous progress with things like adaptive skills, that they became toilet trained. They had functional communication skills, things that to a lot of parents seem like a lot of progress, right? It's not the be all end all, oh, my child doesn't have autism, but huge substantive progress. Okay. And my question was always, well, but did it stick? Did it stick? I want to see these kids later on, and I wasn't seeing anything to do with it. But this film takes you, I believe it's 10 or 11 years later, to 3 of the individual, actually a total of 4 of the kids' homes, and they talked to families and talked to the kids. Now, for one of the kids that they went to the family, it was a child who had been in the group where he made progress, but it wasn't the biggest progress, right? And he had a dual diagnosis, and you got to see the family and see that he was a productive member of society. And the mom said, you have no idea. Our lives are different. He's a part of our family. He's not in a corner. He communicates with us. He has self-care skills so that I have a life again, and talked about really what it meant to her on a day-to-day basis, the improvement that he had made. And that really made a difference for me. And then, though, they followed 3 other kids who had been in that recovered category. And what they did was they interviewed the kids, but didn't let us see them talking. And when they showed them on camera and showed them talking, it was always in a group. In one case, it was 2 boys together, and in another case that I can think of, it was 3 boys together. And they said, see if you can pick out which one is the child who was part of the study and the other one who had nothing to do with autism. I'll tell you what, I couldn't pick them out. I tried too. I really tried. And I would think, okay, I think maybe it's in this one. And then I go, no, I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell. And it meant so much to me to be able to see that. And I wish that video were available widely for people. But I share with you what I saw. And you know I wouldn't lie to you about it. Very, very inspirational. And I bring this up because we've been talking about autism research all week long, and it is time for us to show the A word. And I want to give you a context for what you're seeing. The A word is about a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. And he is benefiting from that Young Autism Project because he's having early intensive behavioral intervention where they've gone into the home. And of course, ABA has changed a lot since that study, and it's actually much more honed and much more specific and more effective than it was all those years ago, more than 20 years ago, and almost 30 years ago now. But in any case, I want you to get an appreciation for seeing the arc of ABA. It took 2 years with the Young Autism Project, and at the point where we're going to join Jack Riley, he's only been having his intervention for about 8 months, and already there's a tremendous difference in this little boy, and we're beginning to see that some of the more disabling aspects of autism are not as much a part of his makeup anymore, and we're only 8 months in. So take a look at this. This is the A word.
We skipped a few in the middle, didn't we, love? Jack Riley likes to watch videos about the ABCs, or the ABBCs, as he likes to say. He kept throwing a fit and misbehaving when he wasn't getting what he wanted. We finally decided it was time to turn off the computer. And of course, we did that without warning him.
He threw one of the biggest tantrums I've ever seen from him because he's used to getting his way now because now that he can say it, we're supposed to reward him. But now he's testing us.
While we are 100% ABA advocates and we believe it is working on our son, there is a little fallout in reinforcing these requests that he doesn't quite understand now that he doesn't get everything he wants.
Bye-bye! This is completely typical. When requesting isn't something that happens naturally with your child, you want to create as many opportunities to practice the skill. So you reinforce each time they request because it will increase the frequency they demand. Once the requests are at a rate you want, then you should begin to fade the frequency of reinforcement and teach new advanced skills such as having the child wait for a desired item or let them know that they must choose something else. These are all life skills. Not every desire will be met, but you are more likely to get what you want if you communicate your wants appropriately.
You want some applesauce, buddy?
Yeah, why don't we put the car over here,
Yeah, let's take the car. We're just gonna take a break. Take a break. Take a break. Do you want this? Do you want the car?
Do you want more car?
Settle down. Settle down.
Okay,
Settle
do you
down.
want more car? Okay, and you want applesauce? Okay. All right, take another bite. One more. There you go.
Nice, that was a good
Okay.
bite too, buddy.
There you go.
Good bite.
All right. Yeah, I should have warned him before I took it away.
We get reminded all the time. It just works so well.
It does, it really
and then
does,
You forget to
yeah.
do it. And
Okay, 10 more seconds and bye-bye car, okay? Bye-bye car. 10 cupcake. Okay. Okay, let me have it. Bye-bye car. No, that's okay. Settle down.
Thank you.
Take two bites, please. Do you want the car?
Yes.
Two bites. 2 bites. Good talking.
One, and then
Good
two.
job. Good job, buddy.
Good job.
Good job. Good job.
How has mealtime been going with you? Still the same? Still
Yeah, it's
pretty
going
good?
well. Yeah. You know what he had last night? Did Cheryl tell you?
No.
We are documenting this because this bite of spaghetti that he's about to take is the first ever meal that Jack Riley has had exactly what Mommy and Daddy are having. With the exception of the cottage cheese. He would eat that too, but we're going slow. I realize it's just spaghetti and lots of kids probably eat spaghetti, but our kid never did. Not for us anyway. And now He's like just a regular kid having dinner with mom and dad.
Good boy. Say choo choo. Choo choo. Say here we go. Here you go. All right, make it go down. Go down. Whee! Yay! Good job. Should we build more tracks? A boat track. Yeah, a boat track. Okay, sure. Here you go. Do you want the green one or the blue one? Green. I? What trees? You want which one? Black. You want black? Oh, well, none of the ones I offered you. Cool. I like that. I like it. And he's definitely requesting more eating and drinking, which is really good to hear. So I don't know if they want to introduce him to other things. Like, it's up to them. But just the fact that he's requesting to drink is a big deal for him. Hey, Jack, one more minute, okay? Say, okay. 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 He has an issue sometimes, like inflexibility a little bit, with just the trains in particular. When I'll ask him to come over to do a program real quick, he'll want to clean up the trains up every single time. With the other toys though, like I can call him over, he can take a break, he's totally fine, and then after we're done with that program, he'll go back and he'll play. With the trains in particular, I don't know why he wants to clean them up every single time. So I'll run some programs and we'll see if he has that issue still. Hey, Jack. Good looking. Come here. Yeah! That's such good listening. Good job, mister. What is this? What are those? Baba. No, what are these? Baba. What's this? What's this one? Ears. Yay! There you go. Ears. Very good, kiddo. Hey, look at me. Hey, look over. Yay! There you go. What are these? Fingers. Good job. What are... Mouth, yeah. What's this? Head. Head. Very good. Okay, one more sticker. What are these? Fingers. Good job. All right. Yeah, that transition was a lot better. Where's Piglet?
Welcome back. I'm looking at Facebook, still talking to all of you on Facebook. But what a wonderful series, and I always encourage you guys to check out the full range of A words that are available to you on their very own, lost my train of thought, their YouTube page. That's what I want to say to you, because it really is amazing to be able to see the arc and see this child who went from someone who did not know how to appropriately request something that manned, and the dad, at one point the therapist is talking about, well, we're just trying to get him manding more, and the dad says, what word did you just say? And she explains to him that's the requesting, and we're reinforcing it every time he does it, because eventually we're going to build on that. We're taking what a child's desires are and making it possible for them to use that as a springboard to language. Now, obviously, there are some of our kids that language, for most of our kids, language is very difficult, and for some of them, it's even more difficult, and in some cases, there are some children that, until we do, find a different way, there are some kids who are not going to speak. It's a heartbreak. And I don't think that anybody knows for sure and can look at a child and say this child's going to speak or this child's not going to speak. Although when we can get a child vocalizing and getting them to request something, we know that that's paving the way towards the great possibility of them speaking. And that's really what manding is all about. Sometimes we start with sign, I just want more. But that's communication, and functional communication is the first order of business with our kids. When we get that on board, we see that challenging behaviors seizures diminish greatly and in some cases go away. So they've gone all the way from a child who was tantruming to get something or to not get something because he's got real food issues, to being a child who is starting to put things in a frame and saying, I want this, whatever this happens to be. You know, not too long ago, I got to see videotape that was taken of my son when he was at that point, and he was eating hot dogs, and he was saying, I want dogs. I want dogs. And it really made me well up because, you know, at that moment in time, we didn't know if he was going to be able to speak. I mean, even the week before, the idea of him saying 3 words together was so far away in my head. And then there he was, I want dogs. And now, good luck getting him to stop talking. Okay? I mean, seriously. I always said early on that I would never tell my child to shut up once we saw that language wasn't necessarily going to happen. But there are times when I've had to say to him, I need you to stop, take a breath, and we're going to move on to a new topic and redirect him because the child's making up for lost time. And that's a good thing. But it all starts with finding a desire that they have and making it so that they have to communicate in order to get it. It's not the easiest thing to do, right? Because when you already see that your child is frustrated and emotional and prone to challenging behavior, and that they don't have the means of communication, and you're holding up the thing that they want, and a lot of them want the technology, right? You're holding it up, and you're pointing to it and pointing to your lips and having them make a sound or a sign or whatever and moving it away until they do. Whoo, not the easiest thing in the beginning, but what you see, what happens as a result of making them work for it, you get real addicted to it. And then suddenly they have to work for everything. And you see in this moment that they've continued and continued and continued to work on things, diminish challenging behavior, desensitize him to some of the issues that he has with food issues, to get him functional communication skills so that he can communicate. And they've arrived at a moment where he's taking the first bite of pasta to have dinner as a family. It's big stuff. It is big stuff. And as the mom says, you know, this may seem like nothing to other families, but we've never had this. But it goes on from there. Continue to watch the series to see how this little boy continues to interact so that it gets to the point where he is more reinforced by people than by things. It's a brilliant, brilliant thing. Check it out, the A word. We are going to take a break, and we are going to come back, and we've got a question that's come in on the live feature that I want to talk about, and we'll be back with that after these messages. What do you think about ABA treatment?
ABA is the one that's documented, but I think that's what I think is important with little kids, the intensity. If this kid's 2, 3, and 4 years old, he needs 20 or 30 hours a week of intensive early intervention, working one-to-one with an effective teacher. And an effective teacher knows kind of how just hard to push, because you've got to stretch these kids. If you don't stretch them somewhere, they don't advance. You push them on them too hard, they go into sensory shutdown. The worst thing you could do with an autistic 2-year-old is to do nothing with them and just let them sit there rocking. And when I was very young at 2.5, ABA type things were used on me, but it wasn't called ABA in that day. You know, my teacher would hold up a cup and she'd speak slowly. You got to speak slowly to these kids because there's auditory processing problems. She'd say cup, and then I'd say cup, and the teacher would praise me. You know, that's very similar to ABA. You know, ABA in its original form is a little kids program. The whole idea is you're trying to get language jump started. And I like the more flexible kinds of ABA. You've got different levels of kids. I had ABA type stuff when I was young, but then after I pulled out of it, I didn't have to go through elaborate things of getting ready for school. I still have this habit now today. I lay my clothes out the night before that I'm going to wear, so when I'm sleepy I can just get them on. And then you have other individuals where they've got to do very structured, breaking down the task analysis. This is where after you get out of the little kids and you get them talking, they kind of diverge into different levels of functioning. And a type of ABA program that'd be suitable for a very severe kid would not be something you'd want to do with a mild Asperger kid, because you're going to bore them to death and make them hate school.
Absolutely. There she is, the amazing Temple Grandin. Such a great time I had sitting and talking with her. We've got more of those bits of interviews that are coming up for you, but we're also today, it's Friday, so we're going to give you a treat, and in a little while we're going to show you Temple's TED Talk. I just can't get enough of it. It's like really good ice cream. You just don't want to stop, right? But I wanted to take a second and answer a question that goes hand in hand with some of the stuff that Temple was just talking about. Somebody had written into our live feature and said, can 23-year-olds with autism adult get behavior service ABA through card? Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things that Temple was saying in that interview, you know, she said, well, ABA used to be something that was just for little kids, but it's morphed and it's changed a lot. And and by the way, ABA was always used with people of all ages, and effectively, by the way. But in terms of being used for autism, when I was telling you the story about the LOVAS, Young Autism Project, and how it came about, and then when people saw how effective it was really targeted for young kids, skill acquisition. But over the years, as those kids have grown up, and some of the kids have needed more support, and other people have heard about it, teens have heard about it, or parents of teens have heard about it, and said, well, now wait a second, will this same thing work with my child? Well, ABA is a great teaching tool that can help anybody to learn any skill and to help diminish any behavior that we're wanting to see go away or at least lessen. So absolutely, at 23 years of age, there are great ABA lessons. And we've talked before on the show about the fact that there are 3 specific areas that are for older kids and the more high-functioning kids on the spectrum that are really pivotal, that very few people are teaching, quite honestly. And in the card realm, they include things that are executive functions, there are cognition skills, and then there are social skills. And it is a wide range of, we've had Dr. Jonathan Tarbox on the show talking about the things that are on the inside that a lot of ABA practitioners don't do, but they do here at CARD, and they do in a couple of other places too. Theory of mind, those kinds of things, perspective taking, being able to be in a social situation and pick up all of the social cues and filter through them using executive function skills to identify what behavior you want to engage in order to achieve your goals for that particular moment or long term. You know, when we think about, let's imagine the social situation of being at a party. You're at the party, and there are a lot of different things going on at the party, right? There's people networking for business. There are people that are hooking up romantically. There are people who are having conversations to position themselves to get access to a meeting or to a person. You know, people have agendas at a party. Lots of different things happening at the same time. Having an awareness of that as an individual, being able to detect who is serving what agenda, not always knowing what they are, but being able to infer, okay, well, this person is behaving this way. This means they want what from me? Are they looking to have a business meeting, or are they looking to have a social interaction? Lots of things to keep track of, and also knowing what your individual goals for this interaction. Are you there just to have fun? But do you need to have a filter of, I'm here to have fun, but I need to keep a little bit of a business persona because my boss is over there watching me? Knowing what's appropriate to say, when is it appropriate to say, how do you react when other people are being inappropriate? Because let's face it, there are people who are not on the spectrum who will behave in an inappropriate way. Immediately what comes to mind, the film that we had featured here on the show, I'm a big fan, The Story of Luke. And in The Story of Luke, it follows a young man, Luke, whose grandmother has recently died, and he has to change his living situation because she was his main caregiver. He goes to live with other family members that he isn't as familiar with, and they're not at all familiar with autism and autistic-like behaviors. So they don't know what to do with Luke, and Luke is wanting what most people want in life. He wants to be happy. He wants to be self-sufficient. He wants to hold down a job, and he wants to date. Those are the things that he wants to do, and he is trying to go about it and figure out how to negotiate all this, but he's in a world of people, some of whom are also on the spectrum and some who are neurotypical, and sometimes the neurotypical people are not behaving in a way that would lead towards achieving goals, right? They're behaving inappropriately. And he has to be the person to say, this is inappropriate, how you are behaving. Very funny, poignant, beautiful film. I encourage you, if you get an opportunity, to see it, the story of Luke. It's great. But I mention this because there are ways that all of us can be better at any skill. And of course, that goes for a 23-year-old on the autism spectrum. So it becomes a question of, what do you want to work on? And I know that there have been many people throughout time, in the 27 years that the Center for Autism and Related Disorders have been here, there have been people of all walks of life excuse me, at all age levels, at all skill levels, who have come in and said, I need some help with this skill. And it's called the Center for Autism and Related Disorders because it doesn't all have to be autism. When you want to be able to achieve a goal, you want to decrease those challenging behaviors, increase skill acquisition. ABA is effective. It does not matter what age you are, but it will determine with your skill level and your age level what kinds of things you want to be working on. So I encourage you, if you're 23 years old, you can still go to centerforautism.com, check the locations tab, see if there's one near you, or you can call the 1-800 number and talk to Amy Fuentes about where would be the nearest office to you, or how you might interact with somebody from CARD to get you the support for the kinds of things that you're looking for. And you'll want to be clear with them about what kind of support. I've seen young people who have said, I need help socially. I need to make friends. I need to be able, I said this on a date and it was not good. I don't understand why. And I want to understand why. I want to understand what to do to position myself socially to explode my business. I want to be able to position myself socially so that I'm available for dating, or that I'm available for friends, so that I have people to interact with during the downtime that I have in my life. There are other people who say, you know, I'm having difficulty understanding all the rules of the road, and I want to be able to drive, and who can help me to work on this? The whole vast array of things that you could potentially work on. And when you are older and your skill level is such, you can specify and say, here's what I want to work on, here's what I want to be better at, and absolutely, I guarantee you that you will make progress. So a wonderful, wonderful thing. Okay. Oh, here's another great question. I'm showing this question and marking it complete. Hi, Shannon. My question is, how do you teach our kids how to cry? I have a 10-year-old mainstream third grader who will come to very, very edge of crying but hold back. Now, how many times I say it's okay to cry, he won't do it. Does Jem have the same issue? No, my child does not have the same issue. I will tell you, my son is not a big crier, so when he does cry, it breaks my heart. But I will also tell you, I mean, there's a lot of different considerations there, because when we talk about crying, we break it down into a behavior, all the different things that go hand in hand with crying, and so, gosh. First of all, my first question would be have you cried in front of your child? Because sometimes we need to model the behavior. Sometimes they need to know it's okay. And I started very early on. My husband grew up with a school of thought of it's not okay to cry. And it's very distressing to my husband when people cry. It's very uncomfortable for him. And you guys, if you watch the show, you know that I can be a waterwork, but I would let you know that I'm a waterwork when things are okay. that it's much harder for me personally to cry when things aren't okay. Do you know what I'm saying? But my husband gets so distressed when I cry when things are sad. But he has learned over the years, I don't have to do anything, I just have to be here. And I specifically said with our son, when he cries, don't tell him to stop crying. I cannot have a child that was our kind of deal as parents. I said, I don't want to raise a little boy who sucks it up. And I can remember 2 specific instances where my son burst into, those crocodile tears that go straight out, and that my husband, because he was trained from a child, he said, okay, that's enough. Let's not cry about it. And I had to, give him the signal and be like, no, we want him to cry about it. And then I would language it for him and say, you're feeling sad. You're so sad right now. It's okay to cry. And that may sound ridiculous, but sometimes our kids just need the permission. They need it languaged for them. Yes, you're sad. It's okay. I'm here and I see you. And you are sad, and it's totally okay to cry. And as I said, also modeling it, that I can remember crying in front of my son and my son looking at me like, what? And laughing the first time he saw me crying because it was this, novel thing to him. And, me having to work with him very gradually over a long period of time saying, mommy is sad, and languaging when he was sad and saying, you are sad. I think with kids, with little kids, it's much easier for them, like me, to cry over the things that are no big deal, right? Because when you want to cry over something that's really sad, it's like going off of a cliff. You don't know where the bottom is going to be. I don't like to do it. As an adult, I don't like to do it. So I would also ask you, have you given him opportunities to cry over things that aren't a big deal and language it then? I wouldn't start with the things like when his feelings are really, really hurt, or when he feels left out, or when you've been upset with him and he's feeling the loss of that. I probably wouldn't. I would start with things that are frustration and or a sad movie like the Finding Nemo movie. Oh my goodness. The first 10 minutes of that movie, woo! And sitting close with your child. People criticize the Grimm's fairy tales, but you know what? The truth of the matter is that it gave children a place to be able to put their fears and to be able to be emotional about, the world's a scary place, right? So I would start with something like that, I think. But I also want to know, have you cried in front of him? Has any male figure cried in front of him and said that it's okay? And you're writing back, yes, he has seen me cry. He's just so ultra sensitive to any negative emotion being shown, hyper aware of emotions. Well, there is a good side to that, right? Because at 10, the other kids will start to point and potentially make fun if they're not stopped for our kids crying at 10. So there is a good side to that, but maybe going through some different rules about when is it really okay to cry and why is it good to cry, and that, every once in a while we need to wash our eyes. Maybe, I come from the acting world, and, I used to teach kids how to cry on stage. And maybe it's a thing where you guys do a little play acting and sit down and say, okay, like with the puppet, the Smarty puppet, and okay, this puppet is very happy. So now we have our puppets and we're being the puppeteers and we're laughing, laughing, laughing. Everything is wonderful. And now we're going to be the sad puppets and we're going to pretend to cry. And you can say, we're pretending to cry. We're crying right now. And you put your body in the position of what crying is like. And you can do the stereotyping, you can do the boo-hoo, and hug him and say, it's okay that we're crying, so that you put it in that context first and work your way up. I think this is a great question that I kind of want to ask Evelyn Gould on Tuesday. I want to remember to ask her, but My child doesn't have trouble crying. In fact, we're on a little bit of the, he's not a big crier, but especially on the playground, if he gets hit with a ball and his eye coordination is still, not that good. And he took a ball to the face earlier this week and he cried. And I don't ever want to tell him, you don't get to cry, because I'm not raising that kind of a little man, but I do know that some of the other kids are starting to notice and be like, you need to be a man, you need to, and he's got to face that in his real world. So I think I have the opposite issue, and you've written more, or somebody wrote more. He has never communicated his feelings. He runs away when I try to teach him to cry. Okay, well then I would start with play acting it. That's how we teach our kids to do anything, and it's never too late to go backwards and do a little role playing and have it be the puppet. Have the puppet cry first and have him make the noise of the puppet crying. And what face does the puppet make? And yes, the puppet is sad. And then you're languaging it and saying, yes, the puppet is sad and it's okay to be sad. It's perfectly okay. And hug the puppet. You can begin to teach it in that way. And when you are crying, say to him, mommy needs a hug right now because mommy is sad. But I'm wondering, when he goes off on his own, do you hear him crying? Have you ever actually seen tear production? Because it might be worth it to ask the pediatrician to check and make sure that that's all working. We always say eliminate, maybe there's a medical issue, and but I wonder if there's, take it to a level where you're just play acting. That whole sociodramatic thing of, okay, and I'm the fireman now, and you're the dog catcher, and blah, 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 and this is the scenario that we're going to do, and make it as fun as possible, and everything's great, and have something happen, and, encourage the boo-hoo cry, over-the-top, bad acting, as a way of warming into it. But we're going to ask Evelyn about this, because I would love to get Evelyn Gould's opinion on this. A very fascinating thing. They say with autism that sometimes a lot of people assume that it's that our kids don't feel. And I think it's the exact opposite. I think that they feel to such an extent that it short circuits everything and they have to stop. We know with other brain issues that's true, that when people have a tremor, and the tremor becomes so much that they literally become frozen statues because the tremor is so extreme that they are now paralyzed. Into statue stand for hours in one position. And I really feel like that's the thing with our kids, and that maybe it's that he's having so much emotion that there's too much in that moment to express. In which case, then you find other places for him to have an outlet for that emotion. Drumming or beating on a pillow as an outlet so that it doesn't bottle up inside him. And maybe crying isn't going to be his thing, but we find something else. That he's got something to punch, or, a treadmill to run on, or a noise that he can make, or just making the noise on the drum. I've got a friend with a very neurotypical child that was what she had him do, and it made all the difference. Okay, and you wrote, I'm sure he can cry. It's like a denial thing, I think. And oh yes, he is feeling everything and holding it all in. Bless his heart. I mean, I really can relate to that to some extent. When it gets to a point where it's really real for me, I get very, I know you guys don't believe that because I cry all the time on the show, but I do. I get very like, well, it's all okay. Nothing's happening. There are no emotions happening, because I personally have to wait until I can let it out slowly, a little bit at a time. And maybe that's his coping, and we just need to give him some skills to let that out. And I think physical activity is really good. And making the noise. If you can get him to make any noise, maybe we don't shoot for crying. Maybe we just get to making the noise of frustration. And that's going to feel funny for him for a while. Again, you know, it can feel like going off. It can be a very scary thing when you've got all that emotion, because if you start to let it out, you don't have the grips on it. So I would go slow, but put it in play and give him some other outlet for it. And then we will talk about it with Evelyn, see what she says on Tuesday. And do me a favor and write me back and let me know what helps and what doesn't help. Because I'm just not 100% sure. Okay, I promised you, do we still have time to show Temple Grandin? Okay, we do. So we're going to show you the Temple Grandin TED Talk, and we'll be back after that. Stick with us.
I think I'll start out and just talk a little bit about what exactly autism is. Autism is a very big continuum that goes from very severe, the child remains nonverbal, all the way up to brilliant scientists and engineers. And I actually feel at home here because there's a lot of autism genetics here. You wouldn't have any... It's a continuum of traits. When does a nerd turn into, you know, Asperger, which is just mild autism? I mean, Einstein and Mozart and Tesla would all be probably diagnosed as autistic spectrum today. And one of the things that really is going to concern me is getting these kids to be the ones that are going to invent the next energy things, you know, that Bill Gates talked about this morning. Okay, now if you want to understand autism animals, and I want to talk to you about different ways of thinking, you have to get away from verbal language. I think in pictures. I don't think in language. Now, the thing about the autistic mind is it attends to details, okay? This is a test where you either have to pick out the big letters or pick out the little letters, and the autistic mind picks out the little letters more quickly. And the thing is, the normal brain ignores the details. Well, if you're building a bridge, details are pretty important because it'll fall down if you ignore the details. And one of my big concerns with a lot of policy things today is things are getting too abstract. People are getting away from doing hands-on stuff. I'm really concerned that a lot of the schools have taken out the hands-on classes because art and classes like that, those were the classes where I excelled. Okay, in my work with cattle, I noticed a lot of little things that most people don't notice would make the cattle balk. Like, for example, this flag waving right in front of the veterinary facility. This feed yard was going to tear down their whole veterinary facility. All they needed to do was move the flag. Rapid movement, contrast. In the early 70s when I started, I got right down in the chutes to see what cattle were seeing. People thought that was crazy. A coat on a fence would make them balk, shadows would make them balk, a hose on the floor. People weren't noticing these things. A chain hanging down, and that's shown very, very nicely in the movie. In fact, I loved the movie how they duplicated all my projects. That's the geek side. My drawings got the star in the movie too. And actually, it's called Temple Grandin, not Thinking in Pictures. So what is Thinking in Pictures? It's literally movies in your head. My mind works like Google for images. Now, when I was a young kid, I didn't know my thinking was different. I thought everybody thought in pictures. And then when I did my book, Thinking in Pictures, I started interviewing people about how they think. And I was shocked to find out that my thinking was quite different. Like if I say, think about a church steeple, most people get this sort of generalized, generic one. Now, maybe that's not true in this room, but it's going to be true in a whole lot of different places. I see only specific pictures. They flash up into my memory just like Google for pictures. And in the movie, they've got a great scene in there where the word shoe is said and a whole bunch of 50s and 60s shoes pop into my imagination. Okay, there's my childhood church, that's specific. There's some more, Fort Collins. Okay, how about famous ones? And they just kind of come up kind of like this, just really quickly, like Google for pictures. And they come up one at a time, and then I can think, well, okay, well, maybe we can have it snow, or we can have a thunderstorm. I can hold it there and turn them into videos. Now, visual thinking was a tremendous asset in my work designing cattle handling facilities. And I've worked really hard on improving how cattle are treated at the slaughter plant. I'm not going to go into any gucky slaughter slides. I've got that stuff up on YouTube if you want to look at it. But one of the things that I was able to do in my design work is I could actually test run a piece of equipment in my mind, just like a virtual reality computer system. And this is an aerial view of a recreation of one of my projects that was used in the movie. That was like just so super cool. And there were a lot of kind of Asperger types and autism types working out there on the movie set too. But one of the things that really worries me is where's the younger version of those kids going today? They're not ending up in Silicon Valley where they belong. Now, one of the things I learned very early on, because I wasn't that social, is I had to sell my work and not myself. And the way I sold livestock jobs is I showed off my drawings, I showed off pictures of things. Another thing that helped me as a little kid is, boy, in the 50s you were taught manners. You were taught you can't pull the merchandise off the shelves in the store and throw it around. Now, when kids get to be in 3rd or 4th grade, you might see that this kid's going to be a visual thinker, drawing in perspective. Now, I want to emphasize that not every autistic kid's going to be a visual thinker. Now, I had this brain scan done several years ago, and I used to joke around about having a gigantic internet trunk line going deep into my visual cortex. This is tensor imaging, and my great big internet trunk line is twice as big as the controls. The red lines there are me, and the blue lines are the sex and age-matched control. And there I got a gigantic one, and the control over there, the blue one, has got a really small one. And some of the research now is showing that people on the spectrum actually think with primary visual cortex. Now the thing is, the visual thinker is just one kind of mind. You see, the autistic mind tends to be a specialist mind, good at one thing, bad at something else. And where I was bad was algebra. And I was never allowed to take geometry or trig. Gigantic mistake. I'm finding a lot of kids that need to skip algebra, go right to geometry and trig. Now another kind of mind is the pattern thinker, more abstract. These are your engineers, your computer programmers. Now this is pattern thinking. That praying mantis is made from a single sheet of paper. No scotch tape, no cuts, and there in the background is the pattern for folding it. Here are the types of thinking. Photorealistic visual thinkers like me. Pattern thinkers, music and math minds. Some of these oftentimes have problems with reading. You also will see these kind of problems with kids that are dyslexic. You'll see these different kinds of minds. And then there's a verbal mind. They know every fact about everything. Now another thing is the sensory issues. I was really concerned about having to wear this gadget on my face. And I came in half an hour beforehand so I could have it put on and kind of get used to it, and they got it bent so it's not hitting my chin. But sensory is an issue. Some kids are bothered by fluorescent lights. Others have problems with sound sensitivity. You know, it's going to be variable. Now, visual thinking gave me a whole lot of insight into the animal mind, because think about it, an animal's a sensory-based thinker, not verbal. Thinks in pictures, thinks in sounds, thinks in smells. Think about how much information there is there on the local fire hydrant. He knows who's been there, when they were there, are they friend or foe, is there anybody he can go mate with? There's a ton of information on that fire hydrant. It's all very detailed information. And looking at these kind of details gave me a lot of insight into animals. Now, the animal mind, and also my mind, puts sensory-based information into categories. Man on a horse and a man on the ground, that is viewed as two totally different things. You can have a horse that's been abused by a rider. They'll be absolutely fine with the veterinarian and with the horseshoer, but you can't ride him. You have another horse where maybe the horseshoer beat him up, and he'll be terrible for anything on the ground with the veterinarian, but a person can ride him. Cattle are the same way. Man on a horse, a man on foot, they're two different things. You see, it's a different picture. See, I want you to think about just how specific this is. Now, this ability to put information into categories, I find a lot of people are not very good at this. Like when I'm out troubleshooting with equipment or problems with something in a plant, they don't seem to be able to figure out, do I have a training people issue or do I have something wrong with the equipment? In other words, categorize equipment problem from a people problem. I find a lot of people have difficulty doing that. Now, let's say I figure out, is an equipment problem, is it a minor problem with something simple I can fix, or is the whole design of the system wrong? People have a hard time figuring that out. Let's just look at something like, solving problems with, making airlines safer. Yeah, I'm a million-mile flyer. I do lots and lots of flying. And you know, like if I was at the FFA, what would I be doing a lot of direct observation of? It would be their airplane tails. You know, 5 fatal wrecks in the last 20 years. Tail either came off or steering stuff inside the tail broke in some way. It's tails, pure and simple. And when the pilots walk around the plane, guess what? They can't see that stuff inside the tail. You know, now as I think about that, I'm pulling up all of that, you know, specific information. It's specific. See, my thinking's bottom up. I take all the little pieces and I put the pieces together like a puzzle. Now here's a horse that was deathly afraid of black cowboy hats. He'd been abused by somebody with a black cowboy hat. White cowboy hats, that was absolutely fine. Now the thing is, the world is going to need all of the different kinds of minds to work together. We've got to work on developing all these different kinds of minds. And one of the things that's driving me really crazy as I travel around and I do autism meetings is I'm seeing a lot of smart, geeky, nerdy kids. And they just aren't very social. And nobody's working on developing their interest in something like science. And this brings up the whole thing of my science teacher. My science teacher is shown absolutely beautifully in the movie. I was a goofball student when I was in high school. I just didn't care at all about studying until I had Mr. Carlock's science class. He was now Dr. Carlock in the movie. And he got me challenged to figure out an optical illusion room. This brings up the whole thing of you got to show kids interesting stuff. You know, one of the things that I think maybe TED ought to do is tell all the schools about all the great lectures that are on TED. And there's all kinds of great stuff on the internet to get these kids turned on. Because I'm seeing a lot of these geeky, nerdy kids, and the teachers out in the Midwest and other parts of the country, when you get away from these tech areas, they don't know what to do with these kids. And they're not going down the right path. The thing is, you can make a mind to be more of a thinking and cognitive mind, or a mind can be wired to be more social. And what some of the research now has shown in autism is there may be extra wiring back here in the really brilliant mind, and we lose a few social circuits here. It's kind of a trade-off between thinking and social. And then you can get into the point where it's so severe, you're going to have a person that's going to be nonverbal. In the normal human mind, language covers up the visual thinking we share with animals. This is the work of Dr. Bruce Miller, and he studied Alzheimer's patients that had frontal temporal lobe dementia. And the dementia ate out the language parts of the brain, and then this artwork came out of somebody that used to install stereos in cars. Now, Van Gogh doesn't know anything about physics, but I think it's very interesting that there was some work done to show that this eddy pattern in this painting followed a statistical model of turbulence. This brings up the whole interesting idea of maybe some of this mathematical patterns is in our own head. And the Wolfram stuff, I was taking notes and I was writing down all the search words I could use, because I think that's going to go on in my autism lectures. We've got to show these kids interesting stuff. And they've taken out the auto shop class and the drafting class and the art class. I mean, art was my best subject in school. We've got to think about all these different kinds of minds, and we've got to absolutely work with these kind of minds, because we absolutely are going to need these kind of people in the future. And let's talk about jobs. Okay, my science teacher got me studying because I was a goofball that didn't want to study. But you know what? I was getting work experience. I'm seeing too many of these smart kids that haven't learned basic things, like how to be on time. I was taught that when I was 8 years old. You know, how to have table manners at Granny's Sunday party. I was taught that when I was very, very young. And when I was 13, I had a job at a dressmaker's shop selling clothes. I did internships in college. I was building things. And I also had to learn how to do assignments. You know, all I wanted to do was draw pictures of horses when I was little. Mother said, well, let's do a picture of something else. They've got to learn how to do something else. Let's say the kid's fixated on Legos. Let's get them working on building different things. The thing about the autistic mind is it tends to be fixated. Like if the kid loves race cars, let's use race cars for math. Let's figure out how long it takes a race car to go a certain distance. In other words, use that fixation in order to motivate that kid. That's one of the things we need to do. And really get fed up when the teachers, especially when you get away from this part of the country, they don't know what to do with these smart kids. It just drives me crazy. What can visual thinkers do when they grow up? They can do graphic design, all kinds of stuff with computers, photography, industrial design. The pattern thinkers, they're the ones that are going to be your mathematicians, your software engineers, your computer programmers, all of those kinds of jobs. And then you've got the word minds. They make great journalists. And they also make really, really good stage actors. Because the thing about being autistic is I had to learn social skills like being in a play. You just have to learn it. And we need to be working with these students. And this brings up mentors. You know, my science teacher was not an accredited teacher. He was a NASA space scientist. Now, some states now are getting it to where if you have a degree in biology or a degree in chemistry, you can come into the school and teach, biology or chemistry. We need to be doing that. Because what I'm observing is the good teachers for a lot of these kids are out in the community colleges. But we need to be getting some of these good teachers into the high schools. Another thing that can be very, very, very successful is there's a lot of people that may have retired from, working in the software industry. And they can teach a kid. And it doesn't matter if what they teach them is old. Because what you're doing is you're lighting the spark. You're getting that kid turned on. And you get them turned on, then you'll learn all the new stuff. Mentors are just essential. I cannot emphasize enough what my science teacher did for me. And we've got to mentor them, hire them. And if you bring them in for internships in your companies, the thing about the autism, Asperger kind of mind, you got to give them a specific task. Don't just say design new software. You got to tell them something a lot more specific. Well, we're designing software for a phone, and it has to do some specific thing, and it can only use so much memory. That's the kind of specificity you need. Well, that's the end of my talk, and I just want to thank everybody for coming. It was great to be here. Okay. Oh, you have a question for me?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. You once wrote, I like this quote, "If by some magic autism had been eradicated from the face of the earth, then men would still be socializing in front of a wood fire at the entrance to a cave."
Because who do you think made the first stone spear? It was the Asperger guy, and if you were to get rid of all the autism genetics, there'd be no more Silicon Valley, and the energy crisis would not be solved.
So I want to ask you a couple other questions, and if any of these feel inappropriate, it's okay just to say next question. But if there's someone here who has an autistic child or knows an autistic child and feels kind of cut off from them, what advice would you give them?
Well, first of all, we got to look at age. If you have a 2-, 3-, or 4-year-old, no speech, no social interaction, I can't emphasize enough, don't wait. You need at least 20 hours a week of one-to-one teaching. The thing is, autism comes in different degrees. There's going to be about half the people on the spectrum that are not going to learn to talk, and they're not going to be working in Silicon Valley. That would not be a reasonable thing for them to do. But then you got these smart, geeky kids, the touch of autism, and that's where you've got to get them turned on with doing interesting things. I got social interaction through shared interests. I rode horses with other kids. I made model rockets with other kids. Did electronics lab, with other kids. And in the 60s, it was gluing mirrors onto a rubber membrane on speaker to make a light show. That was like, we consider that super cool.
Is it unrealistic for them to hope or think that that child loves them, as some might most wish?
Well, let me tell you, that child will be loyal, and if your house is burning down, they're going to get you out of it.
Wow. So most people, if you ask them what are they most passionate about, they'd say things like, my kids, or my lover, or... What are you most passionate about?
I'm passionate about that the things I do are going to make the world a better place. When I have a mother of an autistic child say, my kid went to college because of your book or one of your lectures, that makes me happy. The slaughter plants, I've worked with them in the 80s. They were absolutely awful. I developed a really simple scoring system for slaughter plants where you just measure outcomes. How many cattle fell down, how many cattle got poked with the prodder, how many cattle are mooing their heads off. And it's very, very simple. You directly observe a few simple things. It's worked really well. I get satisfaction out of seeing stuff that makes real change in the real world. We need a lot more of that and a lot less abstract stuff.
When we were talking on the phone, one of the things you said that really astonished me was, you said one thing you were passionate about was server farms. Tell me about that.
Well, the reason why I got really excited and I read about that, it contains knowledge. It's libraries. And to me, knowledge is something that is extremely valuable. So maybe over 10 years ago now, our library got flooded, and this is before the internet got really big, and I was really upset about all the books being wrecked because it was knowledge being destroyed. And server farms or data centers are great libraries of knowledge.
Temple, can I just say it's an absolute delight to have you at TED.
Well,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Isn't she awesome? I just really am inspired by her, and even more so now that I met her. You know, sometimes I've said before on the show, sometimes you meet people and they disappoint. She did not disappoint. She exceeded expectations, which is not shocking to me. She's delightful, absolutely delightful. And I so appreciate, I can't watch that enough because so many of us, and I know sometimes we ask you guys, you know, if you could ask your child anything and they could answer, what would you ask? And so many of you say, and I really relate, you know, what is going on inside that mind of yours? What do you see? What is the world like from your perspective? Don't you just want to crawl into their heads and be them for an hour? Because then if you could, you would go, oh, I get it. This is how I want to explain this to you from now on. This is what I want to, you know, I want to turn these lights off and I want to turn these lights on. You just would change what you did for the privilege of being able to get in there and see, this is what's getting in the way of our communicating, you know? And Temple has been so single-handedly responsible for helping me to get a better view of what it's like inside my child's head. And oddly enough, what's inside her head is vastly different and works in a completely different way than my child's. And quite honestly, my head works more like Temple's than it does like my child's because I'm a very visually driven person. And she will say frequently that, you know, we all have a sense that's a little bit stronger. This is not like it's only people who have autism who think in pictures. It's just that it's so over the top a strength for individuals on the autism spectrum in many cases than it is for the rest of us. You know, I think in pictures too, but I'm perfectly capable of thinking in text as well. And so my assumption was that here was my child with autism, so he must really think in pictures, but he thinks in patterns. And that was news to me. Total news to me. But even before I met her, Temple was making things clearer for me. I've mentioned this before on the show that one of the biggest breakthroughs that I personally had for my child with autism was her explaining that pattern thinking, but also and I'm running out of time here, but last Mother's Day, when there was a picture that my husband showed us, and the picture went away, and my son was able to identify how many cats were in this picture. And I was like, really? Is that really how many cats there were? And then I said to him, how did you know that? And he said, because I took a picture of it in my head and I can move things around. So I lined the cats up and I counted them very quickly. And I went, there it is. That moment as a parent I've wanted all this time. He's able to tell me how he thinks. Fascinating. And I don't know when I'll get another opportunity like that. But those of you who still haven't had it, hold out, because I didn't know if that moment was coming. And sometimes they just happen when you least expect them. Want to remind you, Monday, big day. We are having Nourishing Hope. We're going to have a whole thing about diet, and then we're having a Reva Martin from the Special Needs Network. That's all happening on Monday, so you're definitely going to want to be with us then. I want to say to you back then, until then, give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye.